How are you guys doing? My name is Tiana Lawrence, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer and one of the founders of Factum. And we're building enterprise software for Fortune 500s and governments using blockchain technology. So I know you guys are all insurance, so I'll try to relate this to you guys. But here we go. Most of you guys have probably heard of blockchain by now. It's been a pretty hot topic. Who here has heard of it? Okay, yeah, most of the room. Let's kind of dig into it, though. What makes it interesting? You know, why do we care about this technology? At the core of it, you can take any kind of piece of data, whether it's a video stream or a snapshot of your system or a PDF. It doesn't really matter. You can take any kind of piece of data and you can secure it with a hash. Does anybody know what a hash is? Okay, few people, good. Everybody else in this room, including myself, I had to learn, because it's a cryptography term. It's one-way mathematical proof of existence that you can't go back from. It's different than encryption, where you could break encryption and see data. With a hash, you can't. So it lets you put data into the public domain or into public viewing without actually worrying about it becoming exposed. So you keep your private data private. So what does Factum do? Well, as many of you guys know or have heard, blockchain isn't very scalable, and when you want to put a lot of data into it, it can be quite expensive. So what Factum has done is built a data layer on top of Bitcoin that lets you put as much data in as you want. It's still viewable, so you want to use hashes and not encryption for that data, but it's a way of starting to scale Bitcoin at lower cost, and that's what Factum does. Once you have this basic functionality of being able to establish what happened when, you want to build cool tools on top of that. So that's what Factum has done, is we've started to establish these tools that help say what's happening when and who did it, so identity and other things like that that can be quite useful for the insurance industry. And it looks a lot like one of our other favorite companies, Google. They have open source software that anybody can build on top of, and they have cool tools that help it make it useful. So for you guys, you want to start baking in maybe some of that compliance and things like that. I know in the insurance industry, a lot of that has to do with what is happening when. Back in September, I broke my leg, and I've been going through the claim process of getting all of that taken care of, and a lot of my phone calls are establishing what happened when, did I have coverage, was that doctor office covered at the time that I saw them, things like that. So with these kind of systems, you can start building in business processes that are really useful. You can establish who did what when, and was everything done that was supposed to be done. And more importantly, you can also prove the negative, what wasn't done, and that's something that's pretty unique. So we like to think of ourselves as just fancy record keepers. We like really hairy record-keeping problems, so that's why we're mostly serving industries like financial industries and government and things like that, because they're hairy record-keeping problems. Most of our team's in Austin, Texas. Right now, we're actually 27. I didn't have time to update the slide. And we have teams in China, Honduras, and I'm out here most of the time. So that's about what I have for you guys. If you had questions about blockchain or Factum, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Tiana. Any questions? Seriously, with blockchain?
Do you have any insurance companies as customers?
Yes, we do. Actually, USA, who I think is here, is one of our public ones. We have another one that is not public as well. Yes?
Can you give an idea of the use case of either of those?
No.
What did you suggest?
Establishing what happened when. Thank you. Any other questions? Not making me break NDAs.
40 of the largest banks have started a consortium to do blockchain
R3.
research, R3. I'm curious if you see the similar happening amongst insurance carriers.
I hope not. I'm only joking in that. I was at a breakfast yesterday, and we were all talking about R3, and the idea was that you get 60 of your worst best friends into a room and try to decide on what you're going to do. And the general idea was that no one wanted to expose the use cases that they wanted to do because they didn't want their competitors knowing what they wanted to do with this technology. So maybe it's useful, I don't know. I'm not smart enough for that one, but I think it's something that each company should explore on their own, find out if this is useful, and then once the technology is proven out a little bit more, maybe come up with standards. So, is that answering? Yeah.
Thanks. So what has to happen in the business or in your company for this to really take off? Is there something that you would really love to see happen for this to work?
This thing has taken off so fast. Sometimes I told one of the other founders, I said, I feel like I've been duct taped to the outside of a rocket. When I started here almost a year ago, most people, when I'd asked that question, who's heard of blockchain, it was sort of the same as who had heard of a hash. Like there was two guys in the room, and they were really excited, and everybody else was like, what is going on? Like, why? We don't like Bitcoin. Who is this person? So this industry is taking off. It's still new. So once we have all established that it has value, then we come up with use cases around, let's see if this actually works, and then once you can do that, you can build the technology. Maybe that takes 3 to 6 months. And then you test the technology. Maybe that takes another 18 months. So you can quickly see that this could take several years before we see mainstream integration, once you have established that you even want to use it. So.
One thing I would suggest, I'm going to bring it to Faye, is that you guys, if you have more questions about blockchain specifically, not just Factum applications, Tiana is a great person. Also, Scott, raise your hand over there. He's a director of a fintech. He's been with Bitcoin and blockchain for a really long time. He could be a great person to ask questions in that regard as well.
Okay. Is that it? Thanks, guys.
What? Tiana, wait.
Oh, one more. Okay. Shoot.
We see a lot. I think we've looked at about 200 blockchain companies right now. So how do you differentiate and compare yourself against a lot of activity in this area?
That's a great question. So, Factum's always been about securing data, not moving money faster. And in the last quarter, I'm the chief marketing officer, so I keep an eye on this. I've seen a lot of new startups that are talking about securing data and securing systems. It's also on the consumer that it's such a new type of technology that it's hard to say whether or not it's hard to vet the quality of it or the finer points about what makes it useful. I think that there'll be a falling out once it's been tested and you can start to see what actually has value and what doesn't. So maybe by next year there'll be higher consumer education around what tech works and what tech doesn't work.
Thank you, Tiana.
Thanks, guys.